Hello, and welcome to Shrewsbury Film Society's introduction to Another Round, a Danish film that we showed just before Christmas in 2022. The film brings together two of our favourites, the director Thomas Vinterberg and the actor Mads Mikkelsen. We have in fact shown several of Vinterberg's previous films at Film Society, including The Commune from 2016 and The Hunt from 2012, and we have only been prevented from showing his best-known film Festen, or The Celebration, because of licensing difficulties. Actually, we've also shown a film directed by Thomas Lindholm, who scripted Another Round, called A Hijacking, that some of you may remember was a very tense thriller a few years ago. You'll see from the outset of Another Round that it's made in an extremely direct and punchy style. The camera is handheld throughout and it rarely stops moving. To further ratchet up the pace, there are none of those passive placing shots of buildings or scenery that you often see inserted into films to give a pause for thought and a little bit of an interlude. Here, on the contrary, in fact, the action is almost non-stop and the editing is really frenetic. Even the simple action of pouring a glass of wine or spirits or other alcohol involves a chop, chop, chop of the viewpoint on the editing. This sort of approach, which really completely eschews CGI and other such trickery, has its roots in a film movement called Dogme 95, which Vinterberg and the other well-known Danish director Lars von Trier jointly launched in 1995. It was a reaction against what they saw as the dead hand of technology in the hands of studio executives. Although the movement petered out in the early 2000s, some of its concerns about maintaining a focus on narrative, on acting, and on the directors rather than the studio's control, I think definitely come through in this film. In simple terms, this film is a buddy movie, really, about four middle-aged men who experiment with drinking alcohol, consume far too much, and then struggle to manage the consequences, each in a slightly different way, given that each of them leads a slightly different kind of life. Their drinking is supposedly based on a theory popularised by a Norwegian psychologist called Finn Skaderlund, who is named in the film. And his idea, allegedly, is that blood alcohol level being raised is beneficial for human performance. It turns out that Finn Skaderlund is not a fictional character, but is a real person. But in reality, he disputed whether the filmmakers were interpreting what he said correctly, although he did actually act as a consultant to them during the making of the film. Possibly not coincidentally, Skaderlund was actually removed from the Norwegian medical roll for gross professional misconduct in 2023. And I noticed that he's also been found guilty of fraud earlier this year against one of his patients. So maybe his take on things isn't entirely to be trusted. Regardless of that, I think the plot point works very well, whether or not it's actually based on any kind of reality. For an English audience, it's also, I think, very interesting to note how attitudes to drinking and national anthems, in fact, vary so much from here to Denmark. It does actually seem true that the Danes have a much more relaxed attitude to alcohol consumption in schools and colleges than we do here. And in fact, the minimum age, I think, for buying alcohol in Denmark is only 16. So quite a lot of the heavy drinking by the teenagers that we see in the film is only slightly exaggerated. On the other hand, the Danish education system does seem to place a lot more value on the importance of the national anthem than UK schools and colleges do, and hence the film's leitmotif in using choral singing of the anthem by the school and college students at several points in the film. There have been, of course, many fine films about alcoholism over the years. From a world cinema perspective, one thinks of something like Akira Kurosawa's Drunken Angel, or Ermanno Olmi's The Legend of the Holy Drinker, or the American independent John Cassavetes' Opening Mind. No doubt others will spring to your minds as well. And I'm sure that this film will join that kind of pantheon of remarkable films about alcoholism, partly because it's an extremely good watch, but also I think because in about the last half hour, the final quarter of the film, it does really very beautifully and movingly illustrate both the different forms that recovery can attempt to take and the limits of those recoveries. So we hope you enjoy it. We've certainly enjoyed it a lot, and there's a great deal to take away from this 2-hour gem.